The transport ship landed on the frozen moon with a heavy thud. Danny Cole looked through the small window and saw nothing but ice and gray sky. He had been in bad situations before, but this was something different. This was the Varak's maximum security penal station, the most feared prison in the entire Kalathi Empire. Danny was 34 years old. He had spent most of his adult life hauling cargo across the galaxy in his small ship. It was honest work, and he was good at it. But 3 weeks ago, Kalathi inspectors had found weapons hidden in his cargo bay. Weapons he had never seen before. Weapons that someone had planted there to destroy his life. The guards who came to get him were tall reptilian creatures with dark green scales. They moved with careful steps, keeping their distance from him like he was some kind of wild animal. Danny had seen this fear before. Everyone in the galaxy knew about Earth. They called it a Class-15 Deathworld, a planet so dangerous that nothing should be able to survive there. But humans did more than survive. They thrived. "Move, human," one of the guards said. His voice was shaking. Danny stood up slowly. He did not want to scare them more than they already were. "I'm not going to hurt anyone," he said calmly. The guards did not believe him. They put heavy chains on his wrists and ankles. 4 of them surrounded him with weapons drawn as they walked him off the ship. The cold hit Danny like a wall. The temperature was far below freezing, and the wind cut through his thin prison clothes. But Danny had grown up in northern Canada. He had worked fishing boats in Alaska. Cold was an old friend to him. The guards watched him with wide eyes. They were shivering inside their heated suits, but the human just walked normally, like he was taking a stroll through a park. The prison was a massive structure built into the ice. Everything was gray metal and frozen stone. Danny could hear the wind howling outside as they led him through long corridors and security checkpoints. At each checkpoint, the guards would stop and stare at him. Word was spreading fast. A human had arrived. They finally reached a large office where a huge Kalathi sat behind a metal desk. This one was different from the guards. His scales were almost black, and old scars covered his face. He looked at Danny with cold, calculating eyes. "I am Overseer Vryn," the Kalathi said. "I run this facility. Do you know why you are here, human?" "I was framed," Danny said simply. "I never carried weapons on my ship." Vryn made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Every prisoner says they are innocent. It does not matter to me. What matters is that you are now my responsibility." He leaned forward. "I have heard stories about your kind. Deathworld survivors. Persistence predators. Creatures that can heal from wounds that would kill any other species." Danny said nothing. "I want you to know something," Vryn continued. "This prison has held the worst criminals in the Empire for 200 years. No one has ever escaped. And no one has ever caused trouble without facing consequences." He pressed a button on his desk. "You will be housed in the pit. It is the deepest level of this facility. The coldest. The most isolated. If you survive, perhaps I will be impressed." 2 guards grabbed Danny's arms and led him away. They walked for what felt like hours, going deeper and deeper into the prison. The temperature dropped with every level. By the time they reached the pit, Danny could see frost forming on the walls. His cell was small, with a metal bed and a thin blanket. There was no heating unit. The guards threw him inside and sealed the door without a word. Danny stood in the center of his cell and looked around. The temperature was around -40 degrees. For most species in the galaxy, this would be a death sentence. They would freeze within hours. Danny sat down on the bed and wrapped a thin blanket around his shoulders. It was cold, yes, but he had survived worse. His body was already adapting, his metabolism increasing to generate more heat. He thought about the winters back home, about ice fishing with his father, about camping in the mountains during snowstorms. He lay down and closed his eyes. Within minutes, he was asleep. In the security room above the pit, a young guard named Torek watched the monitors with amazement. He had pale blue scales and was smaller than most Calathi. This was only his second month working at the prison, and he had never seen anything like this. "He is sleeping," Torek said to himself. "How is he sleeping?" The other guards had already left. They expected the human to be dead by morning. But Torek could not look away. He watched the human's chest rise and fall with steady breaths. He watched the frost form on the blanket, and still the human slept peacefully. Torek had grown up hearing stories about humans. His teachers called them monsters. His parents called them demons. But looking at this man sleeping calmly in conditions that would kill any Calathi, Torek did not see a monster. He saw something else. Something that fascinated him. He pulled up the human's file on his computer. Danny Cole, age 34. Occupation, cargo hauler. No previous criminal record. Arrested for weapon smuggling. Torek read the file 3 times. Something did not add up. A man with no criminal history suddenly becomes an arms dealer? It made no sense. He looked back at the monitor. The human had rolled onto his side, still sleeping, still breathing. Torek made a decision. Tomorrow, when he delivered the morning meal, he would talk to this human. He wanted to understand. He wanted to know how anyone could survive what should be impossible. Outside the prison, the frozen wind continued to howl. But deep in the pit, Danny Cole slept like a baby, dreaming of warm oceans and sunny skies. 3 days passed, and Danny Cole was still alive. The news spread through the prison like fire. Guards whispered about it in the hallways. Prisoners heard rumors through the walls. The human in the pit had not died. He had not even gotten sick. Torek was assigned to deliver meals to the lower levels. It was a job no one wanted because of the cold, but Torek had volunteered. He wanted to see the human again. He carried a metal tray with standard prison food as he walked down the frozen corridors. His heated suit kept him warm, but he could still feel the bitter cold pressing against him. When he reached Danny's cell, he stopped and looked through the small window. The human was doing something strange. He was moving his body in repeated motions, bending and stretching, pushing himself up from the floor and then lowering himself down again. His breath came out in white clouds, but his movements were strong and steady. Torek pressed the button to open the food slot. "Your meal," he said nervously. Danny stopped his exercises and turned around. He was sweating in temperatures that should have frozen him solid. He smiled at the young guard. "Thank you," Danny said. He walked over and took the tray. "You're the one who watches the monitors at night, aren't you?" Torek felt his scales flush with embarrassment. "How did you know?" "The camera in the corner," Danny said, pointing. "It moves sometimes when everyone else has gone home. I figured someone was curious." He sat down on his bed and began eating. "My name is Danny. What's yours?" "Torek," the guard answered. He knew he should leave. He knew talking to prisoners was against the rules. But his feet would not move. "Nice to meet you, Torek. First job?" "Second month," Torek admitted. Danny nodded. "That's rough. Starting out in a place like this." He took another bite of food. It was cold and tasteless, but he ate it without complaint. "Why did you become a prison guard?" "If you don't mind me asking." Torek hesitated. No prisoner had ever asked him a personal question before. No one had ever seemed interested in him at all. "My mother is sick," he said quietly. "The medical treatments are expensive. This job pays well." Danny's expression softened. "I'm sorry to hear about your mother. What's wrong with her?" "Her lungs," Torek said. "The doctors say she needs a special surgery, but we cannot afford it yet. I send most of my pay to her every month." "That's a good thing you're doing," Danny said. "Taking care of family. That matters more than anything." Torek felt strange. This human, this supposed monster from a Deathworld, was being kind to him. Kinder than most of his fellow guards had ever been. "Can I ask you something?" Torek said. "Sure. How are you surviving down here? The temperature should have killed you days ago." Danny smiled and set his empty tray aside. "Where I come from, we have something called winter. For half the year, parts of my planet get very cold. Colder than this sometimes. Humans learned to survive it thousands of years ago. Our bodies adapt. We generate heat, we conserve energy, we keep going." He shrugged. "I grew up in a place called Canada. I used to play hockey on frozen lakes when I was a kid. This feels like home to me." Torek could not believe what he was hearing. A planet where half the year was this cold? And humans lived there by choice? "Tell me more," Torek said. "About your planet." Danny's eyes lit up. For the next hour, he told Torek about Earth. He described oceans so vast you could not see the other side. Mountains so tall they touched the clouds. Forests filled with thousands of different creatures. Deserts where the sand burned under a blazing sun. And seasons, the way the world changed from hot to cold and back again throughout the year. Torek listened with wonder. He had never imagined such a world could exist. The Calathi homeworld was stable and controlled. Nothing ever changed. The idea of a planet that transformed itself every few months was incredible. "It sounds beautiful," Torek whispered. "It is," Danny said. "It can also be deadly. But that's what makes humans who we are. We learn to survive everything our planet threw at us. Fire, ice, storms, predators. We adapted. We endured." A harsh voice cut through the air. "Torek, what are you doing?" Torek spun around. Sergeant Mora stood at the end of the corridor, her dark red scales tight with anger. She was an older guard, experienced and respected. And she looked furious. "I was just delivering the meal," Torek stammered. "The meal takes 2 minutes," Mora said coldly. "You have been here for over an hour. Step away from that cell, now." Torek obeyed immediately. He walked toward Mora with his head down. Mora glared at Danny through the window. "Do not talk to my guards, human. I know you're kind, manipulative, dangerous. You will not corrupt this facility." Danny met her eyes calmly. "I was just having a conversation. No corruption intended." Mora grabbed Torek's arm and pulled him away. "Never speak to that creature again," she hissed. "They are predators. They will say anything to get what they want. Do you understand?" "Yes, Sergeant," Torek said quietly. But that night, after everyone else had gone to sleep, Torek returned to the pit. He brought something with him. A small package of dried fruit he had saved from his own meal. Danny was awake when Torek arrived. He smiled when he saw the young guard. "I thought you weren't supposed to talk to me," Danny said. "I am not," Torek admitted. "But I wanted to give you this." He pushed the fruit through the food slot. Danny took it and looked at Torek with genuine gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you. This means a lot." They talked for another hour. Danny taught Torek a simple card game, using pieces of torn paper as makeshift cards. They laughed quietly together as Torek struggled to understand the rules. In the shadows of a nearby corridor, Sergeant Mora watched them. She had followed Torek, ready to punish him for disobeying orders. But something stopped her. She watched the human teaching the young guard, patient and kind. She heard their laughter. Mora remembered her brother. He had died in a mining accident 10 years ago because the company refused to pay for proper safety equipment. No one had helped him. No one had cared. This human had every reason to hate them. They had thrown him into a frozen pit to die. But instead of anger, he showed kindness. Instead of hate, he offered friendship. Mora turned and walked away silently. She did not report Torek. She did not say anything to anyone. But something inside her had shifted, and she did not know what to do about it. 2 weeks after Danny's arrival, disaster struck the prison. It started with a low rumble that shook the walls. Then the lights flickered. Then the heating units began to fail, one by one, level by level. Torek was in the guard quarters when the alarms started screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere. Guards ran through the corridors, shouting orders that no one could hear over the noise. "What is happening?" Torek yelled to a passing officer. "The main generator." The officer shouted back. "Something broke it. The heating system is failing. We need to evacuate the upper levels." But evacuation would take hours. And without heat, the prison would reach deadly temperatures within 30 minutes. Torek felt his blood go cold. His people were cold-blooded. They needed warmth to survive. Without the heating system, every Calathi in this facility would freeze to death. He ran toward the pit. The corridors were already getting colder. Torek could see his breath forming clouds in front of him. His heated suit was working hard, but he knew it could not last forever. Guards were collapsing around him, their bodies shutting down from the dropping temperature. When he reached Danny's cell, he found the humans standing at the door, completely calm. "The heating failed," Torek gasped. "Everyone is going to die." "I know," Danny said. "Open the door." "What?" "Open the door, Torek. I can help." Torek hesitated. Releasing a prisoner was the worst crime a guard could commit. He would lose his job. He might even be sent to prison himself, but then he thought about his mother, about all the guards who had families waiting for them, about the prisoners in their cells who would freeze without ever seeing another sunrise. He pressed his authorization code into the panel. The door slid open. Danny stepped out and put a hand on Torek's shoulder. "Where's the generator room?" "Level 3, Torek said. "But it is very far, and the corridors are getting colder every second. Then we need to move fast." "Come on." They ran together through the frozen halls. The temperature was dropping rapidly now. Torek could feel his muscles getting stiff, his reactions getting slower. But Danny moved like the cold did not affect him at all. He grabbed Torek's arm and pulled him along, keeping him moving when his body wanted to stop. They found guards collapsed on the floor. Danny stopped at each one, checking if they were alive, positioning them in ways that would preserve their body heat. "They will survive if we fix this quickly," he said. On level 5, they found Sergeant Mora slumped against a wall. Her eyes were half closed, and her breathing was shallow. Torek felt his heart break. For all her harshness, Mora had always been fair to him. Danny knelt beside her and removed his own thin jacket. He wrapped it around her body and began rubbing her arms and legs. "She is still alive," he said. "Her body is shutting down to save energy. We need to get the heat back on." "Leave me," Mora whispered. Her voice was barely audible. "Fix the generator." "We will fix the generator," Danny said firmly. "And you will be alive to see it." He looked at Torek. "Stay with her. Keep her warm. I will find the generator room myself." "But you do not know the way," Torek protested. Danny smiled grimly. "I will figure it out." He ran off into the frozen darkness. Danny moved through the corridors like a ghost. The temperature was now far below what even the pit had been. Ice was forming on the walls. His breath froze the moment it left his lips. But his body was working hard, burning energy, keeping his core temperature stable. He found the generator room after 10 minutes of searching. The door was frozen shut. Danny kicked it 3 times before the ice cracked and the door swung open. Inside, he found chaos. The main generator was a massive machine that took up half the room. Smoke was coming from a panel on the side, and warning lights were flashing red across every display. Danny had spent 15 years working on cargo ships. He knew machinery. He knew how to fix things when they broke in the middle of space with no help coming. He found the problem quickly. A cooling unit had failed, causing the generator to overheat and shut down. But the shutdown had triggered a chain reaction that damaged the restart systems. The generator could not turn itself back on. Danny would have to do it manually. He opened the damaged panel and looked inside. The metal was so cold it would cause instant frostbite to any Calathi who touched it. But Danny was human. His body could handle extreme temperatures that would kill other species. He reached inside with bare hands and began working. The cold bit into his fingers like knives. His skin turned red, then white. But he kept working, reconnecting wires, replacing damaged components, forcing the systems back into alignment. After 15 minutes that felt like hours, the generator hummed back to life. Warm air began flowing through the vents. The lights stopped flickering. Danny fell back against the wall, exhausted. His hands were damaged, the skin cracked and bleeding. But he was alive, and so was everyone else. When Torek found him 30 minutes later, Danny was sitting on the floor with his hands wrapped in torn pieces of his shirt. "You did it," Torek said, tears forming in his eyes. "You saved everyone." Danny looked up and smiled weakly. "How is Mora?" "Alive, because of you." The news spread through the prison within hours. The human prisoner from the pit had saved 17 guards and over 60 prisoners. He had walked through deadly cold that would have killed any Calathi. He had fixed the generator with his bare hands. Overseer Vryn summoned Danny to his office the next day. The warden looked at the human with an expression that might have been respect. "You violated every rule in this facility," Vryn said slowly. "A prisoner should never be released from their cell under any circumstances." Danny said nothing. "But you saved my people," Vryn continued. "Guards I have known for years. Prisoners I am responsible for. You could have let them die, and no one would have blamed you. Why did you help them?" Danny met the overseer's eyes. "Because it was the right thing to do." That evening, Mora came to Danny's cell. Her scales had regained their color, and she stood straight and strong. But her eyes were soft in a way Torek had never seen before. "You wrapped me in your jacket," she said quietly. "You kept me alive." "Anyone would have done the same," Danny replied. "No," Mora said firmly. "They would not have. We threw you into the pit to die. We treated you like an animal. And you saved us anyway." She paused. "Why?" Danny thought for a moment. "Where I come from, we have a saying. You do not let people freeze to death just because they put you in a cage. Kindness is not about what others deserve. It is about who you are." Mora stood in silence for a long time. Then, slowly, she bowed her head. It was a gesture of deep respect among her people. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will not forget this." She walked away, and Danny returned to his bed. Outside, the heating system hummed steadily, keeping the prison warm. And deep in the pit, something had changed forever. 1 month had passed since Danny Cole arrived at Varak's prison. In that time, everything had changed. The guards no longer feared him. Many of them stopped by his cell just to talk. They asked about Earth, about human culture, about the strange customs of his people. Danny answered every question with patience and humor. Torek visited every day. Their friendship had grown strong. The young guard had started learning English words, and Danny was teaching him human card games with a real deck that Mora had secretly brought from the supply room. Mora herself had become one of Danny's closest allies. She no longer saw him as a monster. She saw a man who had risked his life to save people who had treated him badly. That kind of person deserved respect, but something else was happening behind the scenes. Something that would change everything. Torek had never believed Danny was guilty. The evidence did not make sense. So he had started investigating quietly, using his access to the prison's computer systems to dig into the case. What he found shocked him. The weapons planted on Danny's ship were military grade. They had serial numbers that traced back to a Kalafi government warehouse. And that warehouse was controlled by a powerful official named Director Hassan. Hassan was in charge of trade regulations for the Outer Rim territories. He was rich, connected, and ruthless. And according to the records Torek found, Hassan had recently lost several major shipping contracts to human cargo haulers. Danny Cole had been one of those haulers. Torek brought his findings to Mora late one night. They sat in a quiet corner of the guard quarters, speaking in whispers. He was framed, Torek said, showing her the files on his datapad. Director Hassan wanted to eliminate his competition, so he planted weapons on Danny's ship and had him arrested. Mora studied the evidence carefully. Her eyes narrowed with anger. This is serious. If what you found is true, a high-ranking official committed a major crime to destroy an innocent man. We need to tell someone, Torek said. We need to get Danny out of here. It is not that simple, Mora replied. Hassan is powerful. He has friends in the High Council. If we go public with this, he will bury us. He will destroy our careers, our families, everything. Torek felt his heart sink. So we do nothing? We let Danny rot in prison for a crime he did not commit? Mora was silent for a long moment. Then she stood up. No, we do not do nothing. But we need to be smart about this. We need help. They went to Overseer Vryn. The warden listened to their evidence with a stone face. When they finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. You are asking me to challenge one of the most powerful men in the Empire, Vryn said slowly. Do you understand what that means? We understand, Mora said firmly. But this is wrong. Danny Cole is innocent. He saved this entire facility. He deserves justice. Vryn closed his eyes. He thought about his duty, his family, his position. He thought about the human who had walked through deadly cold to save his guards. He thought about honor. I cannot promise anything, Vryn finally said. But I will review the evidence. And if it is solid, I will forward it to the High Council myself. Torek felt hope for the first time in weeks. Danny learned about the investigation the next day. Mora came to his cell and explained everything. Danny listened quietly, his expression unreadable. Even if they believe you, Danny said when she finished, Hassan will not go down without a fight. Men like him never do. We know the risks, Mora replied. But it is the right thing to do. Danny smiled sadly. You sound like me now. 3 days later, Vryn called Danny to his office for a private meeting. The warden looked tired, like he had not slept in days. The High Council has received the evidence, Vryn said. They are opening an investigation into Director Hassan. Danny nodded slowly. That is good news. It is also dangerous news, Vryn continued. Hassan knows he is being investigated. He knows where the evidence came from. And he knows where you are. You think he will try something, Danny said. I think he will do whatever it takes to protect himself. You are the only witness who can connect him to the weapons. Without you, the case falls apart. Danny stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the frozen wasteland beyond the prison walls. So what do you suggest? I suggest you be very careful, Vryn said. I am increasing security around the pit. Mora and Torek will be assigned to guard you personally. But I cannot guarantee your safety. Hassan has resources we cannot match. Danny turned back to face the warden. Thank you for telling me. And thank you for doing the right thing. I know it was not easy. Vryn studied the human for a long moment. Why are you so calm? If I were in your position, I would be terrified. Danny shrugged. Fear does not help anything. It just clouds your judgment. Whatever happens, I will face it. That is all anyone can do. That night, Torek stayed outside Danny's cell, keeping watch. They talked through the bars like old friends. "Are you scared?" Torek asked. "A little," Danny admitted. "But mostly I am grateful. A month ago, I thought I would die alone in this frozen pit. Now I have friends who believe in me. That means more than you know." Torek felt his throat tighten. "We will protect you. I promise." Danny smiled warmly. "I know you will." The peace lasted for 2 more days. Then, in the middle of the night, alarms began screaming throughout the prison. Red lights flashed in every corridor. Mora burst into the pit with her weapon drawn. Her scales were pale with fear. "We have company," she said to Danny through the cell bars. "Armed forces just breached the outer perimeter. They are heading straight for this level." Danny stood up immediately. "Hassan's people?" "Mercenaries," Mora confirmed. 20 of them at least. "Professional killers. They are not here to talk." Torek appeared behind Mora, breathing hard. "The warden is organizing defenses on the upper levels, but they are moving too fast. They will reach us in minutes." Danny looked at both of them. These 2 Calathi had become his friends. They had risked everything to help him, and now they were standing between him and death. "Open the cell," Danny said quietly. Mora hesitated. "Open the cell," Danny repeated. "I am not going to hide while you fight for me. We face this together." Mora and Torek exchanged glances. Then Mora entered the release code. The door slid open. Danny stepped out and looked at his friends. "Do you have a spare weapon?" Mora reached into her belt and pulled out a pistol. She handed it to Danny handle first. Their eyes met. "Together," she said. Danny took the weapon and checked its charge. In the distance, they could hear explosions and gunfire getting closer. "Together," Danny agreed. The 3 of them turned to face the darkness. Whatever came next, they would face it side by side. The mercenaries moved through the prison like shadows. They were professionals, trained killers who had done this kind of work many times before. Their mission was simple: find the human and eliminate him before he could testify. Danny, Mora, and Torek took position at the entrance to the pit. The corridor was narrow here, which gave them an advantage. The attackers could not surround them. "How many guards do we have?" Danny asked. 6 more are on their way," Mora replied. "But they might not make it in time." Danny nodded and checked his weapon again. "Then we hold the line until they do." The first mercenaries appeared at the end of the corridor. They were wearing black armor and moved in tight formation. When they saw the 3 defenders, they opened fire immediately. Danny reacted faster than any of them expected. He pushed Torek behind cover and returned fire in a single fluid motion. 2 mercenaries went down before the others realized what was happening. "Stay behind me," Danny said to Torek. "Watch our flanks." The firefight was intense. Energy bolts filled the corridor, scorching the walls and filling the air with smoke. Mora fought with cold precision, picking her shots carefully. But Danny was something else entirely. He moved through the battle like a force of nature. His Deathworld reflexes let him dodge attacks that should have been impossible to avoid. His endurance kept him fighting when anyone else would have collapsed from exhaustion. And his aim was deadly. More mercenaries fell, but they kept coming. "There are too many," Torek shouted over the noise. "We cannot hold them forever." Danny saw an opportunity. A support beam on the ceiling was damaged from the fighting. One good shot would bring it down and block the corridor. "Cover me," he said. He broke from cover and sprinted toward the beam. Mercenaries turned their weapons on him, but Mora and Torek laid down suppressing fire, forcing them back. Danny raised his pistol and fired. The beam collapsed with a thunderous crash. Metal and ice came down in a wall, blocking the corridor completely. The mercenaries were trapped on the other side, but Danny was not fast enough getting clear. A piece of falling debris struck him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He hit the ground hard. "Danny!" Torek screamed. He ran to the human and knelt beside him. Danny was bleeding, but he was conscious. He gritted his teeth and forced himself to sit up. "I am fine. Just a scratch." "That is not a scratch," Mora said, joining them. She looked at the wound with concern. It was bad, but not fatal if they treated it quickly. From behind the collapsed debris, they could hear the mercenaries trying to find another way through. They had bought time, but not much. "Can you move?" Mora asked Danny. "I can move," Danny said firmly. He accepted Tarek's help getting to his feet. "We need to find a defensible position and wait for reinforcements." They fell back to the central chamber of the pit. It was a large room with multiple exits, which gave them options. The 6 guards who had been coming to help arrived minutes later, taking up positions around the chamber. The mercenaries found another route and attacked again. But this time, the defenders were ready. The battle was fierce. Guards fell on both sides. Danny fought through his injury, his movements slower, but still deadly. Torek stayed close to him, covering his weak side, refusing to let his friend fight alone. At one point, a mercenary broke through and charged straight at Danny. Before he could reach the human, Mora stepped into his path and took him down with a single shot. "You saved my life once," she said to Danny without looking away from the battle. "I owed you." Danny smiled despite the pain. "I think we're even now." The fighting continued for what felt like hours. But finally, the tide began to turn. Prison reinforcements arrived from the upper levels, led by Overseer Vryn himself. The mercenaries, caught between 2 forces, began to fall. The last attackers surrendered when they realized they were outnumbered. Their leader, a scarred veteran with cold eyes, threw down his weapon and raised his hands. "It is over," Vryn said, walking through the smoke and debris. He looked at the destruction with grim satisfaction. "We captured 12 of them alive. The rest are dead." Danny leaned against a wall, exhausted and bleeding. Torek was beside him, his scales covered in dust but otherwise unhurt. "What happens now?" Danny asked. Vryn smiled slightly. "Now we make the captured mercenary talk. And I suspect he will tell us everything we need to know about Director Hassan." He was right. Within days, the mercenary leader confessed everything in exchange for a lighter sentence. He provided recordings, documents, and communications that proved Hassan had ordered the attack. Combined with the evidence about the planted weapons, it was more than enough. Director Hassan was arrested by the High Council security forces. His trial was swift, and his conviction was unanimous. He was sentenced to life in prison, ironically in the same facility where he had tried to have Danny killed. 2 weeks later, Danny stood in the prison courtyard for the last time. His shoulder was bandaged but healing well. In front of him stood Torek, Mora, and Overseer Vryn. "The High Council has formally exonerated you of all charges," Vryn announced. "Your record has been cleared. You are free to go." Danny nodded, but his eyes were on his friends. "I never thought I would say this about a prison, but I am going to miss this place." Torek stepped forward, his eyes wet. "Will you come back to visit?" "Try and stop me," Danny said with a warm smile. He pulled the young Calathi into a hug. Torek stiffened for a moment, unfamiliar with the human gesture, then relaxed and hugged him back. Mora approached next. She stood straight and formal, but her voice was soft. "I was wrong about you, about your kind. I hope you can forgive me." Danny took her hand. "There is nothing to forgive. You stood beside me when it mattered. That is all that counts." Vryn was last. The warden extended his hand in the human fashion. Danny shook it firmly. "You taught my guards something important," Vryn said. "You taught them that strength is not about power. It is about what you do with power. I will not forget that." "Neither will I," Danny replied. He walked toward the transport ship that would take him home. At the door, he turned back one last time and waved. Torek waved back, tears streaming down his scales. 3 months later, a package arrived at the Varax prison. It was addressed to Torek. Inside was a deck of genuine Earth playing cards and a photograph of Danny standing beside a vast blue ocean. On the back of the photo, Danny had written a message in careful letters. "Come visit sometime. I will teach you to swim. Your friend, Danny." Torek held the photograph to his chest and smiled. Outside the prison, the frozen winds still howled across the moon. But inside, the guards told stories about the human who had come to them as a prisoner and left as a hero. They spoke of his courage, his kindness, and his impossible strength. And sometimes, late at night, when the temperatures dropped and the cold seemed unbearable, the guards would remember the human who survived the pit, who fixed the generator with bare hands, and who fought beside them against impossible odds. They would remember Danny Cole, and they would feel a little warmer, because that is what humans do. They endure, they adapt, they connect. And no matter how dark or cold the galaxy becomes, they find a way to bring light and warmth wherever they go. That is the power of humanity. Not in weapons or technology, but in the simple, stubborn refusal to let the universe break them. And the guards of Varax prison would never forget it.